There are moments in life, when everything feels right. When you wake up next to the person you love, when your best friend is just a phone call away, when you think this is it. This is the life I always wanted. That was me. 3 years ago. My name is Daniel. And I was, by every definition, a happy man. I had a wife, Sarah. We'd been together for 7 years. Married for 4. She was the kind of woman who laughed at her own jokes before she finished telling them. The kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthdays. The kind of woman you build a future with. And then there was Marcus. Marcus and I had been friends since we were 14 years old. We grew up on the same street. Played on the same basketball team. Survived the same heartbreaks, the same failures, the same triumphs. He was the best man at my wedding. He gave a speech that made my mother cry. We were brothers. Not by blood but by choice. And sometimes, that bond feels even stronger. Sarah loved Marcus like a brother too. They joked around, they teased each other, they argued about movies and sports. It was easy. Natural. Safe. Or so I thought. I was working long hours at the time. Building my business. A small logistics company I'd started from scratch, just me, a van, and a dream. By year 3, I had 12 employees. Things were growing. But growth has a cost. I was away. Mentally, physically. I was always somewhere else. I told myself, I'm doing this for us. For our future. For the family we're going to start. Sarah understood. She said she understood. But understanding and feeling understood are very different things. It started with small things. Things I dismissed. Sarah's phone face down on the table. A laugh that died the moment I walked into the room. A text she closed quickly with an explanation I didn't ask for. Just Marcus. He sent something funny. I didn't question it. Why would I? It was Marcus. Marcus was still coming around regularly. Sunday dinners. Watch parties for the game. He'd sit across from me, eat my food, drink my beer, and look me in the eye. He looked me in the eye. I want you to think about that. Because that detail haunts me more than anything else. It wasn't carelessness. It wasn't guilt slipping through the cracks. It was a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice to sit across from his best friend, the man he called his brother, and lie. Every single time. Months passed. The small things became patterns. Patterns I filed away somewhere deep, because the alternative, the truth, was unthinkable. Then came the business trip to Atlanta. 3 days. I'd been gone before, but something about this trip felt different. Sarah was lighter when I left. That sounds strange, I know. But there's a specific kind of lightness that comes when someone feels relief instead of sadness. I was 2 hours into the drive when I realized I'd forgotten a folder with contracts I needed. I turned around. Didn't call. Didn't text. I think somewhere, in some part of my mind I hadn't admitted existed. I already knew. I pulled up to the house at 10:47 p.m. The lights were on. Marcus's car was in the driveway. Marcus's car. In my driveway. At 10:47 at night. I sat in my car for 4 minutes. I know because I watched the clock. I kept thinking, there's an explanation. There has to be an explanation. I walked in through the back door. Music drops to near silence. I don't need to tell you what I found. You already know. And if you've ever been in that position, if you've ever had the floor disappear beneath your feet, then you know there are no words for it. Not really. There are sounds. There are images burned into your brain that you'd give anything to erase. There is a cold that settles in your chest that has nothing to do with the temperature in the room. I didn't scream. I didn't fight. I didn't cry. I just stood there. And they saw me. What happened next unfolded in a kind of slow motion I still can't fully explain. Sarah said my name. Just once. Quietly. Like a question. Marcus didn't say anything. He didn't look at me. The man who had looked me in the eye for months suddenly couldn't. I put my folder on the counter. I turned around. I walked back out to my car. I drove to a hotel. And I sat on the edge of a bed in a room that smelled like cheap soap and other people's loneliness, and I tried to figure out who I was now. Because here's what nobody tells you about betrayal: it doesn't just break your heart. It breaks your history. Suddenly, every memory you trusted becomes a question. Every moment you held sacred becomes contaminated. That vacation we took to Portugal, were they texting then? That night Marcus stayed late because his car wouldn't start. Was that real? That evening Sarah said she was visiting her sister. Was she visiting her sister? The past rewrites itself. And you can't stop it. Over the next 48 hours, the truth came out in pieces. It had been going on for 5 months. 5 months of Sunday dinners. 5 months of Marcus looking me in the eye. 5 months of Sarah telling me she understood why I worked so hard. 5 months of building a life on top of a lie. Sarah called. She texted. She wanted to explain. She wanted to come to the hotel. She said it was a mistake. She said it meant nothing. She said she loved me. I turned my phone off. Marcus texted once. Daniel, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to say. I deleted it without responding. There was nothing to say. There was nothing he could say. Some things can't be undone with words. Shift subtly, still sad but with a faint undercurrent of strength. The weeks that followed were the hardest of my life. I filed for divorce. My lawyer told me I had a strong case. I had evidence, witnesses, and clear grounds. Sarah didn't contest it. Maybe she felt guilt. Maybe she was relieved. I didn't ask. I sold my half of the house. We'd bought it together. I'd built a garden in the backyard. I'd painted the kitchen wall that color Sarah picked out because she said it made the room feel alive. I walked out of that house for the last time with 4 boxes and a gym bag. My business suffered. When you're falling apart inside, it bleeds into everything. I made poor decisions. I lost 2 clients. One of my best employees left. For a while, I thought I might lose the company too. And my social circle gone. Because when 2 people in a friend group fall apart, everyone is forced to choose sides or disappear. Most disappeared. I was 34 years old and starting from zero. But here's the thing about zero. Zero is also a beginning. I started therapy. Not because I wanted to, but because a friend who'd been through his own divorce told me, you can either process this now, or it will process you later. And later is worse. He was right. Therapy didn't fix me. It didn't erase the anger or the grief or the confusion. But it gave me a place to put it all. A container for the chaos. And slowly I began to see clearly again. I threw myself into the business. Not to escape, but because for the first time in years, I was building something for me. Not for a future I'd planned with someone else. Not to prove something. Just for me. Within 8 months, I'd recovered the lost clients and signed 3 new ones. Within a year, I had 20 employees. I was still sad. But I was also moving. I want to be honest with you about something. Part of me, and I'm not proud of this, wanted them to suffer. I wanted the universe to balance the scales in some dramatic, obvious way. I wanted karma to show up at their door with paperwork. And here's the strange thing. It kind of did. Sarah and Marcus tried to make a relationship work. Of course they did. They'd blown up their lives for each other. They had to try. Anything less would have made the destruction meaningless. But relationships built on betrayal carry the weight of that betrayal. Always. Within 6 months, Marcus's friends, our old friend group, had distanced themselves from him. People don't forget what you're capable of. And when everyone around you knows that you looked your best friend in the eye and lied for 5 months, trust becomes a very expensive thing to rebuild. His girlfriend before Sarah, someone he'd dated for 2 years, reached out to mutual friends. Said she'd always suspected he'd cheated on her too. Things began to add up. Marcus lost his job 8 months later. Not because of the affair directly, but the affair had frayed something in him. He was distracted, unreliable, making poor decisions. His employer noticed. He moved back in with his parents at 36 years old. Sarah tried. I'll give her that. She went to therapy. She reached out to mutual friends and tried to rebuild. But the version of herself she'd been before, the woman who remembered everyone's birthdays, who laughed before she finished her jokes, that version had made a choice. And choices change us. She and Marcus broke up 10 months after the affair came to light. It was messy. Painful. It cost them both the very thing they'd sacrificed everything to have. I found out through a mutual acquaintance. And I want to be transparent, my first reaction was not joy. It wasn't relief. It wasn't even satisfaction. It was just a deep, quiet sadness. For the people they could have been. For the years we'd all wasted. For the trust that couldn't be rebuilt. I've had a lot of time to think about all of this. A lot of late nights. A lot of long drives. A lot of honest conversations with myself in the mirror. And here is what I've come to understand. People who betray you reveal something important, who they actually are beneath who you needed them to be. That's painful. But it's also a gift, because you can't build a real life with a version of someone that doesn't exist. Sarah wasn't the woman I thought she was. Marcus wasn't the brother I believed him to be. That's a devastating thing to accept. But accepting it is the only path forward. I also learned something about myself. I had been absent. Not completely, but enough. Enough that a distance grew between Sarah and me that I never noticed until it was filled by someone else. I'm not saying that excuses anything. It doesn't. Betrayal is a choice. Always. But I can hold 2 truths at once: they made a terrible choice, and I wasn't fully present in my marriage. Both things are true. And recognizing my part, not to take blame, but to take ownership, made me a better man. I learned that grief is not linear. Some mornings I woke up feeling free. Other mornings I woke up furious at 3 a.m. for no reason I could name. I learned to let both happen without trying to rush through either. I learned that who stands beside you when you're at zero tells you everything about who truly belongs in your life. Pause 3 seconds. And I learned finally, deeply, that I am enough. On my own. Without the marriage, without the friendship, without the version of my life I thought I was building. I am enough. Today, I run a company with 27 employees. I have an apartment I actually love. I have a small group of friends who showed up when everything fell apart, and those friendships are the most honest I've ever had. I'm not in a relationship yet. I'm not rushing. I'm learning what it feels like to be fully present with myself, with my work, with the... If you're watching this and you're in the middle of your own version of this story, I want you to know something. The ground will come back. It doesn't feel like it. I know. But it will come back. And when it does, you will stand on it differently. Steadier. More real. More you than you've ever been. That's the thing about losing everything. Sometimes, losing everything is how you finally find yourself.